Hello, my name is Lisa Chen and I'm a volunteer with CPA Canada Financial Literacy. I'm here today to talk about how to teach your kids about money. We have about an hour or so to get together and we've got a lot to cover, so please save your questions until the Q&A session at the end. Today we're focusing on our kids and helping them learn about money. As a parent, you're the best person to teach them. In fact, according to a survey conducted by CPA Canada and Harris Decima, over 90% of Canadian youth ages 16 to 22 believe that teaching money skills at home should be a priority for parents, and 83% have approached their parents for advice about money. Teaching them at an early age builds a foundation for the knowledge, skills, and confidence they need to make appropriate financial decisions for the rest of their lives. So imagine most of you are here because you have kids. I want to get a sense of how old they are. Anybody have kids ages 5 to 8? Preteens from 9 to 13? Teenagers from 13 to 17? Emerging adults 18 and over? Today we'll talk about why teaching children about money is important, the goals and challenges of raising money-smart kids, how financial decisions evolve throughout childhood, age-appropriate approaches to teaching your kids, including tips on allowances, budgeting, credit cards, and technology. At the end, we'll also provide you with some tools and resources before opening up to the Q&A session. Insert a personal kickoff story about how you or a friend taught a lesson or encountered obstacles on teaching children about financial matters. Our goal as parents is to raise kids to be healthy, happy, successful adults who can manage their financial lives independently for their sake as well as ours. If we don't succeed in teaching kids about money, it may come back to hurt us. How would you feel, for instance, if you had to support your adult children financially? Or if you had to bail them out of financial distress with savings that you've worked so hard to save for your future? What happened if this was during your retirement period? It's not a very pleasant idea, is it? These are the consequences for us as parents, but what about the kids themselves? If you've ever struggled with financial problems that were brought on by bad habits or just not knowing how to manage money well, you know what a negative impact it can have on your life generally, and especially on your relationships with the people that are close to you. Certainly, we don't want that for our kids. Let's take a look at some of the common challenges parents face when teaching kids about money. Our research shows that although 78% of parents have tried, 2/3 of them do not feel particularly successful teaching their kids about money. For a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons is that they think the children are too young or they're not interested. According to the survey I mentioned before, parents tend to wait until their children are in their late teens before teaching specific financial management skills. But there are lots of ways to engage your children with money. The challenge is to make it relevant to them and fun. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Although it may not feel like a priority when kids are young, these early years are an important time to lay the foundation and teach the basics. When you earn money, there are 4 things you can do with it: save, spend, share, and invest. The concepts are the same as they get older, but the stakes get much higher. It's better if they can learn from their mistakes when the stakes are low. At what age did you notice your children becoming more aware of money? How did you know? What did they say? Does anyone have a story to share? Other challenges parents face are a lack of knowledge, lack of time, and lack of opportunity, or not always recognizing when an opportunity presents itself. Look for teachable moments like grocery shopping, going to the mall, planning a birthday party to provide financial lessons. Teaching your kids how to manage money is particularly hard if you're not good at it yourself. You may feel embarrassed, but it comes really easy just to avoid the conversations altogether, especially if you're running a busy household with so many competing demands on your time. So a lot of parents procrastinate. What if your kids are already teenagers, if you've never taught them about money? Is it too late? No, it's never too late to teach a new skill or learn how to do things better. But as you'll see later, you should approach it differently than you would with young adults, as teens are more mature and sophisticated. At this point in the presentation, you might want to take a pause and engage the audience by asking questions and ask them for examples of stories that they can share of how they taught their kids about money. Let's start with tips for teaching young kids about ages 5 to 8. Because of their age and lack of maturity, young kids need guidance. They probably don't have a very realistic attitude about money. Start with fundamentals like, what is money? And what value do you get from money? Introduce them to different denominations of bills and coins, and explain their relative value and what certain amounts can buy. For example, use things that they can relate to, like an apple costs 50 cents or an ice cream costs $3.50. If you're going out of the country, discuss the concept of foreign exchange. Does your child know what you do for a living? If not, have a discussion about it. Help your kids understand where your household money comes from. This will reinforce the fact that there isn't a money tree in the backyard. You can also bring your kids with you to the bank or to the ATM. Just make sure you explain that you don't get money out of it if you don't put money in it. Allowance, money for gifts, holidays, and birthdays, and tooth fairy money all provide kids with their very first earnings. Piggy banks are an old-fashioned way to teach young kids to save and are still popular today. But piggy banks have come a very long way. We now have multi-slotted piggy banks. They have a built-in feature to help young kids make smart and deliberate money choices. They have separate slots and compartments for save, spend, share, and invest. Watch for those teachable moments, which can provide powerful lessons. Planning a trip to the grocery store or to the mall can include making a list, finding and cutting out discount coupons, comparison shopping, paying the bill, and getting change. Also, board games like Monopoly and Life are a fun way to learn about money. I mentioned earlier about donating birthday money to charity. There's an easy way to do that. It's called EchoAge. The website is www.echoage.com, ECHOAGE. It's easy for guests, good for the environment, and meaningful for kids. When you send out e-invites to the party and ask guests to contribute money online in lieu of gifts, when the party is over, EchoAge sends half the money collected to buy one gift for your child and the other half to a charity your child has chosen. Teaching preteens. Preteens are going through many changes, and hopefully they're becoming a little bit more responsible and a little bit better at math. Many are being introduced to the world of work and money through part-time jobs like babysitting, dog walking, snow shoveling for neighbors. It's time to graduate from a piggy bank to a bank account. Youth accounts generally don't have fees, but they receive very low interest rates. This is a good time to discuss the concept of interest with your preteen and talk about how banks pay you on savings, but also charge you when you borrow money. Once a large amount of savings have accumulated, talk about the benefits of transferring some savings to a term deposit or guaranteed investment certificate, which normally pays a higher rate of interest but cannot be redeemed before the maturity date. One effective way to encourage saving towards a goal that you've chosen is to offer to match their savings. Kids respond well to the idea of getting free money. Your preteen gets a debit card when she opens her youth account. You may want to set up certain parameters such as who keeps the card, can they withdraw cash without any supervision. Make sure they know there are usually limits as to how much can be withdrawn or purchased by debit card per day or week. Of course, money must be in account to cover withdrawals or debit purchases. Remind them to be very careful not to lose their card and not to disclose the PIN to anyone. With your child, jointly track the progress of the account, either online or with print statements. Preteens are exposed to a lot of advertising and may not understand that its purpose is to seduce you to buying things you wouldn't otherwise buy. It's your job to help them become media savvy. Preteens rely heavily on what their friends say. By age 12, most kids will side with peers over parents when it comes to purchasing decisions. When your kids do save up to buy something on their own, make the time to debrief it about it by asking them some questions. Was it worth the money? Was it worth the effort involved in earning it and saving for it? What did they enjoy or dislike about the shopping experience? What, if anything, would they do differently next time? At this point in the presentation, you may have stories to share, whether from your own child or a friend who has a preteen, and you might want to share your story about their experience on the preteen's spending habits. Teenagers. Teenage years are a time of transition to the adult world and with more financial responsibilities. Ideally, you have been teaching your kids about money all along, but if you haven't, it's never too late. This is a crucial time for your teen to develop sound money management skills and for you to nurture their ability to make good financial decisions. In fact, 85% of youth believe that teenagers who are taught financial literacy skills by their parents are more likely to be financially successful in life. Teenagers can get into some relatively serious earnings with their first real job, so walk them through their paycheck explaining that gross versus net pay is a result of tax withholdings such as CPA, EI, etc. Cash is king. Cash or other financial resources will help them ride out difficult times and provide the capital to take advantage of opportunities. On the other hand, being in debt is like being enslaved. Interest on debt on the debt itself is like an albatross around your neck. Compound interest is a double-edged sword. It's great when you're a saver and it's working for you. But if you're a borrower, it works just as hard against you. Have them get into the habit of paying themselves first. Every month, have them take a certain amount of money directly from their earnings and put it into a savings account. To make sure it happens, set it up as an automatic transfer. That way they can only spend what's left in the bank account. As a rule of thumb, we generally save 5 to 10% of what you earn. And if 10% is easily achievable, then you might want to increase it to 15 or 20%. Have them get into a habit of tracking spending. It makes them more aware of their spending habits, and it's a great reality check. They may be shocked to learn that their actual spending bears very little resemblance to how they think they're spending their money. Writing everything down is a powerful motivator to make spending choices. Have them keep receipts and use their smartphones for apps to help them, as well as online banking to manage their money. Teenagers are prey to spending temptations, media, and peer pressure. Are you familiar with the latte factor? Everyone has it. It's one of those little indulgences like fancy coffees that are expensive, but they can really add up over time, and you won't even notice it. Your teen has a latte factor too. Ask them about it. Show them how to spend wisely by shopping sales, using coupons, getting discounts, comparison shopping, negotiating, and bargaining. Finally, encourage them to use their personal values to set goals. For example, if they value adventure and want to travel, have them start a fund. We have a worksheet to help your teen discover their personal values, and another one to set specific and measurable goals, which is included in your package today. So let's move on to young adults who have finished high school and may be considering going to college or university. Of those who have received money management advice from their parents, 70% are optimistic about their financial future. One of the financial rites of passage is filing a tax return. Special tax credits for tuition and textbooks, for example, can be used to reduce income taxes they owe. They should also know about tax-advantaged saving vehicles, such as the Tax-Free Savings Account, TFSA, or Registered Retirement Savings Plans, RRSP. One of the most daunting tasks for a family is paying for post-secondary education, and there are different ways to finance it. It could be a combination of your savings, possibly from RESP withdrawals, current earnings, scholarships, your child's savings or earnings from summer or part-time work or from co-op work terms, loans, student loans, amounts borrowed from a personal line of credit or from other sources. Students need a plan to pay off student debt within a reasonable time. In fact, the Federal Task Force on Financial Literacy recommends a financial literacy component be integrated into the Canada Student Loans Program for students receiving funding. This may take the form of mandatory counseling about credit and debt. If your child does get student loans, under certain circumstances, they can claim most of the interest paid as a tax credit. If they do not use the credit, they can carry it forward for 5 years. Let's take an overview of the basic philosophy around money, which I just touched upon. At every stage when your child earns money, they have 4 choices: save, spend, share, and invest. How they implement these decisions evolves as they grow up and mature. If you look at the chart, one commonality you'll notice across the age groups is allowance. From a few dollars as a young child to major infusions of cash for post-secondary students. We'll talk about a little bit more about that later. When it comes to savings, kids start with a piggy bank, move on to a youth account, then a bank account, or GIC, and then into more complex saving vehicles. Lessons around saving versus spending cannot happen too early. Look for those teachable moments. I mentioned earlier for young kids to see the value in savings and watching their money grow and making good spending decisions. Setting this foundation will help them when the time comes to follow a budget. I'll elaborate on many of these key points as we move along. Sharing opportunities range from donating birthday money to charity to active fundraising. But sharing isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about community work, volunteering time and talents to help others. Most students are now required to volunteer in order to graduate from high school. And finally, when it comes to investing, before your kids embark on an entrepreneurial journey at any age, help them think it through. Will they need equipment or materials? And if so, how will they pay for them? Do they need to borrow money for startup capital? And how will they pay back? Teenagers are mature enough to understand the concept of compound interest, earning interest on your interest as well as your original principal. And emerging adults should know about investing for the long term with stocks, bonds, and other investments. Now I want to go back to some financial themes that cut across all age groups. Allowance. It's a hotly debated issue. Should it be given as a payment for chores, a money management tool, or both? For some of us here, we got an allowance for doing some basic chores around the house. If you didn't do them, your parents held back on your allowance. Back then, no one thought about allowance as a money management tool. Parents didn't consider that by withholding their kids' allowance, they were depriving them of the opportunity to learn how to manage money when the stakes were low. Some families feel that paying their child to do chores around the house sends the wrong message. They feel those chores should be done out of sense of family responsibility. Others disagree and feel that the kids should earn their allowance. What do you do in your home? There is no right or wrong answer, and as always, you have to do what works for you and your child and your family. Whatever the case, I suggest you pay allowance on a regular basis so that it feels like a steady income your kids can rely on. For young kids, a rule of thumb is $1 per year of age per week. For example, your 7-year-old gets $7 a week. Don't forget to pay it in small denominations so your child can allocate different coins to save, spend, share, or invest. Whether working or not, preteens and teens still need an allowance. But now you can use it to gradually transfer more financial responsibility to them to cover their basic needs and some of their wants. Allowances even continues when emerging adults need money for post-secondary expenses. For older kids, allowance and budgets go hand in hand. When kids are spending their own money, even if you've given it to them as allowance, they tend to think longer and harder about a potential purchase, whether they really need it or they just want it. When they're spending your money, it doesn't seem to count in the same way. There is often less deliberation. So when children become preteens and teens, decide who pays for what and what comes out of their allowance, but by referring back to your budget you create together. At this point in time, you could insert a story about a spending story that you've had with your child or a friend's child. If you have teenagers, give them more responsibility by having the budget cover things like clothing, transportation, and entertainment. They need to learn to be accountable for you for the increased responsibility, so encourage them to keep the receipts. This is also useful tweaking their budget. At the end of the session, we'll give you a teen budget worksheet that they can work together with you. For emerging adults, this is when they're living on their own for the first time and have to plan and manage a much more comprehensive household budget, plus their own bank account and a credit card. Next, let's look at credit cards. Although preteens and teens don't have their own credit cards, it's a good time to inform them about how they work. Explain that, unlike paying with cash or a debit card, the money does not come out of your bank account right away. Instead, you pay later when the credit card bill is due. Show your credit card statement to your child so he can see the amounts and entries. Show how all the purchases add up to one large sum that you have to pay monthly. Explain that if you don't pay on time, you will be charged interest because borrowing money costs money. Discuss the power of compounding, that the amount you owe keeps growing if you do not pay your balance off on the due date. Read them that really scary sentence on the statement that tells you how many years and months it will take you to pay off your balance if you pay only the minimum payment each month. Emerging adults who have reached the age of majority can get their own credit card. So make sure you discuss the appropriate use of credit and credit cards, including the benefits and risks. Key benefits are convenience and practicality. They allow you to create a credit history and earn a credit rating, earn rewards such as frequent flyer miles or cashback payments, and one of the few methods of paying for online purchases. Risks and disadvantages of credit cards include the ability to damage your credit rating if you miss payments or if your payments are late. They're more expensive than personal lines of credit because of the higher interest rate. And if not used responsibly, credit cards can lead to increased spending and bad debt. Talk about the need to look for low interest rate cards and stress the importance of paying balances off on time. Some cards can provide student discounts on purchases. Technology has transformed everything, including how we communicate and how we manage money. Let's talk about cell phones. How old were your kids when they got their first cell phones? Or younger kids getting cell phones? And are they getting them at a younger age than your older kids? Every family has to decide for themselves whether a cell phone is appropriate and affordable for their preteen. Even though you're probably paying the bill, your preteen should be involved in the purchase of the phone and the plan. A friend of mine figured out an effective way to involve his kids in this process. Before buying a phone, he takes his kids to the mall and he has them walk around to the different kiosks and gets information about the different phones and plans. The kids have to think through their planned usage. Do they need unlimited text? A data plan for internet access? Minutes for talking? Believe it or not, some kids hardly talk on their phones. And then they have to find the most appropriate plan. My friend then has his kids pitch him on their choice and his decision is made. Because the kids understand their package, there is less likelihood that they will go over. But if they do, they understand that the cost will come out of their allowance. Be extra careful about roaming charges. If you travel outside of Canada, you may want to consider asking your kids to leave their phones at that time. A friend's daughter had racked up over $500 in cell phone bills in Mexico, and that required a lot of sweet talking to have it reduced. Because teens and emerging adults are avid users of technology, they should be encouraged to use smartphone applications and mobile and online banking to track their spending and also manage their finances. And finally, let's look at virtual spending, something our parents never had to worry about. There's a whole world of ways to spend money online: iTunes, eBay, e-commerce sites, and many other temptations. Preteens need to understand that although they're not using cash, they are still spending real money. It's wise to talk to them about the way online transactions work so that they don't accidentally buy things. If they're going to be buying things online with a credit card, it should be part of their budget and their allowance. For any age, it's good to remember to be careful when using any website that asks for confidential financial information, and think about how sharing personal information on social media sites could lead to identity theft, fraud, and scams. Reinforce the importance of protecting your personal information, documents, passwords, and PIN numbers. To wrap up, I wanted to summarize some of the key messages. Teaching kids about money when they're young can be fun, both for you and for them. Take advantage of teachable moments as they crop up in your everyday life to have conversations with your kids about money. Keep the information age appropriate. The money habits that kids form as preteens can be foundation for how they relate to money when they're much older. Make sure they develop healthy habits. And as kids mature, they're better able to grasp the rationale behind budgeting and more likely to be accountable for how well they stick to a budget. Teens are not too young to set meaningful financial goals, ones tied to their values. Some teens or young adults may be interested in learning about investing, and the sooner they learn about basic concepts, the better they're prepared when they actually have the money to invest. Parents mistakenly tend to wait until their kids are in their late teens before teaching about credit cards, budgeting, investing, and minimizing interest on debt. Volunteering is a great way for young people to put their values into action, and it pays dividends in terms of real-world experience and personal satisfaction. Volunteering as a family could be a great tradition. Today, we have a number of worksheets to help you and your kids with the various money matters we've talked about. There's a goal-setting worksheet. This is a tool that helps you and your kids set SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-framed. We also have a worksheet on teen budget. It's a budget for teenagers living at home. There's also a role model self-assessment questionnaire. This you can use to determine what kind of a financial role model you are and get your partner to do it too. CPA Canada has developed another session called Are You a Good Financial Role Model? It's an excellent companion presentation to this one. It's about the importance of being a good financial role model, and you also learn the 10 healthy habits of financial management. The last worksheet is called the Values Validator. This worksheet helps you determine the things in life that are most important to you and helps you complete the goal-setting worksheet. You might want to get your whole family to help filling it out. And to help you further along with your teaching, there are a range of resources available online, and here are just a few that we recommend. At this time, I'll open up the floor to any questions or comments. At this point, you might want to refer them to the worksheets that were handed out and ask them to take a look to see if they have any questions. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope this presentation has given you the information and skills you need to communicate effectively with your kids about money. I hope it will help your kids feel more confident about their financial decisions in the future as well. Thank you. The presentation contains some examples of simulated situations which, if you have your own personal stories that you'd like to replace it with, feel free to do so.